Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. On the first half, we dealt with situations in Sudan where, unfortunately, despite negotiation tables on the horizon, there's still no ceasefire in Sudan. And right now, we're switching gears to Kenya, where the leader of Azimio, Umoja, One Kenya Alliance, Raila Odinga, has taken legal action against President William Ruto for forming a commission of inquiry into the Shakahola court massacre. Odinga claims that the president has violated the constitution by usurping the powers of separate arms of government and constitutional bodies and seeks a court order to declare the commission unconstitutional. He also argues that the commission undermines the authority of the Senate committee that has already begun its investigation.
Meanwhile, the Commission of Inquiry, chaired by Court of Appeal Judge Lesit, is set to begin its work and submit its recommendations to President William Ruto within 6 months. The legal action taken by Odinga emphasizes the importance of respecting the authority of different arms of government and constitutional bodies in investigating matters of public interest. The tragic event at the Good News International Church require a thorough investigation that respects the rule of law. Now, joining us live from Nairobi to make sense of this latest development is Allan Odero, a political analyst. A warm welcome to you, Allan, and thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. Always my pleasure.
Now, Allan, can you elaborate on the grounds for Raila Odinga's petition against President William Ruto and the government? And how does he argue that the president has usurped his powers in the formation of the Commission of Inquiry?
Thank you very much. So Raila Odinga is raised two constitutional questions that will be determined by the court of law. So far, he indicated the intention to proceed to court to challenge the executive decision taken by the president. Premise is that his argument on two grounds. That one, that the president doesn't have any power under our current constitution to appoint a commission of inquiry, that's the exclusive preserve of the parliament. And then secondly, he argues that it's a breach of the separation of powers. It also brings into question the idea of conflict of interest, because arguing that the executive can't investigate himself, given that it's the police the police are right at the center of this in terms of errors of commission and omission that allowed such extreme cases of human rights violations and to proceed undetected. So this is likely going to take some time because court cases take quite some time, but I would add that really there is basically over politicization of the matter by the Raila Odinga leader. The country right now is interested in knowing the truth about what went down. It's true that procedurally the direction that President Ruto took isn't entirely proper, because it appears to be like stealing the thunder from the process already ongoing by the Senate Investigative Committee. But I think the country won't really be drawn too much into the court cases, into the litigation. People are really keen on the truth, but there's equally a need for caution, given that government left on their own won't be entirely transparent. We've so far seen the other day when the area was declared a crime scene. And journalists barred from proceeding with live coverage, proceeding with accessing the scene. Raila Odinga attempted last week to access the scene, but he was barred by police officers on the ground that it was a crime scene. So I agree that there's a need for caution, there's a need for vigilance, but the direction of proceeding to the court of law will certainly be overtaken by event, because the Senate right now is already in the process of conducting its parliamentary investigation, and then the Commission of Inquiry that was appointed by the president, it should also begins its work maybe later this week or maybe early next week. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Allan. I mean, looking for the truth is what Kenyans are really looking for. But before we go further for these discussions, let's hear from Raila Odinga himself and what he has to say concerning this particular issue.
Shakahola and the growth of cult activities in the nation. Mr. Ruto is as much a suspect as is all the cult pastors from Shakahola and beyond. Ruto is the leader of the cult movement disguised as Christianity in Kenya. Ruto, Gachagua, and their families must tell Kenyans when and how they knew these cult leaders and what they knew about them. Ruto and Gachagua must tell Kenyans how much these so-called pastors contributed to their 2022 campaign. How many times have the so-called pastors accessed the State House since the start of this regime? As we stated at the start, Ruto must know he has no powers to appoint a judicial commission of inquiry, so that option is out. We are all aware that judicial commissions of inquiry have been the tool of choice whenever the government has something to hide, like you believe Ruto does now. Parliament must swing into action, come up with a select committee, and get to the roots of the cultic activities in the country and the abuse of religion for political gain. Parliament must help us establish whether the deaths at Shakahola were acts of rogue pastors, human sacrifices, or body organ trade, and who the beneficiaries were.
That was from Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister in Kenya and the leader of the One Kenya Alliance, that is Azimio la Umoja in Kenya. And right now we're going to bring into the conversation Richard Bosire, a political analyst joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. So, Richard, you've heard from Raila Odinga. On one side, he's claiming that President William Ruto is complicit in the actions, especially with all the religious activities. And on the other side, he's saying that the commission of inquiry that has been instituted by William Ruto is unconstitutional. How do we make sense of these different parts that Raila Odinga is giving to the people?
Thank you for inviting me. First of all, the opposition leader Raila Odinga is alleging that the president is planning to cover up the facts in the Shakahola massacre by forming the commission of inquiry. He says it's not the role of the executive to come up with that commission. According to Raila, he says it's the judiciary and parliament which should lead the investigations, or the IG, which, you know, the IG is an independent office in Kenya. That's the Inspector General of Police. So he says Senate should lead that probe, and the judiciary also should lead that. And you're aware that Senate has already formed an ad hoc committee that is already investigating the Shakahola massacre, and today they have already started the work. And I think they will run parallel with the commission of inquiry that has been formed by the president. So we're expecting two different reports from the Kenyan government, from the parliament and from the executive. So what is worrying people is that if we have two different reports with different facts, what will happen at the end? But at the same time, the police and the DCI are also still investigating the Shakahola massacre. So at the end, we might finally have like 3 reports on the whole incident. So I think they should have converged and do a singular probe by all state agencies, so that we have one report that can be implemented, so that we know the facts and what happened at the Shakahola forest.
Thank you very much, Richard Bosire. Now, back to you, Allan. Who are the key witnesses and entities that the Senate ad hoc committee will be summoning to testify, and what type of evidence will they be expected to provide? And knowing that this will be going on alongside this presidential panel of inquiry, and also the regular Inspector General of Police and the criminal proceedings looking into this, how will they divide their time with these witnesses? Is it not going to contradict each other and just make the whole situation drag out? Which should be given preference? Hello, Allan, are you there?
Allan, can you hear us? Go on, please.
Hello.
Go on, please.
Did you get my question, Allan?
Yeah, sure. I did. Sorry, I did.
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead
so
and respond, please.
I would agree with you that the multiple investigations that are going on at the same time is more of a duplication, and it's muddying the waters, What the police initially began to undertake was geared towards ultimately arriving at a criminal prosecution of the case, getting the suspects who are culpable getting arrested. So far, the pastor remains in police custody. The court granted an extra 30 days for him to continue being held in confinement pending further investigations. The government has taken a number of interventions. They've today withdrawn the licenses of the TV station owned by a second pastor who is alleged to be an accomplice to the Mackenzie guy. And then we've also got the Parliamentary Select Committee that wants to undertake a more comprehensive investigation, looking at the circumstances that made this really possible. Who are the culpable guys? So Parliament itself doesn't really have the power to prosecute, but it's all about informing the country, providing the truth to the country, kind of a closure. And then in terms of the appointment of the Commission of Inquiry by the President, that would raise some question because one, adding on to what Raila Odinga said, Ruto has long promoted religiosity, in public affairs. He's of a strong Christian background. He's always advocated his faith, Christian faith, publicized his Christian faith, and then he also has a very close relationship with the Christian evangelical wing in this country. So a wider segment of this country will treat with a pinch of salt, the Commission of Inquiry, given that some of the people pointed right there is allies, like the joint secretaries and then the lead counsel, people who have been his close legal associates. So I think in the fullness of time, Kenyans would be interested first in knowing the truth. We know how the criminal justice system takes ages in this country.
And where will they get the truth from, Allan? I mean, we're having 3 inquiries. Where exactly will they look? So if the Senate Ad Committee has another truth and the other one says this is the truth, so how will the people actually get the real truth of this particular situation? And what will be the outcome of all of this? I think I want Rita to actually talk about this.
Okay. I think the buck stops with the police and DCI because they are responsible in taking action against criminals, and so Kenyans will judge more the DCI and the police rather than the Parliament and the Commission of Inquiry formed by the President. So we're expecting DCI and police to work around the clock and get the facts on this matter so that Kenyans know the truth. Because it's the police who have the powers to summon people, arrest people, get to the facts, take people to court, prosecute people. So Kenyans, I think we are expecting a lot from the police and the Director of Public Prosecution. And also another issue is about the Registrar of Society. Is that office is responsible for registration of churches. So we're also expecting that office to take action against those cult churches and ensure that only the churches which are adhere to the laws are operating in Kenya. You're also aware that the President has formed a team to review the regulations of churches in Kenya. So in the next 30 or 60 days, we're expecting like 4 reports of different issues about the Shakahola massacre. But at the end of it, it's justice must be done to the families who have lost their loved ones, and we're expecting that to happen in the judiciary. So those other reports can just they cannot tie or ensure the justice is done. It's only the police and the judiciary which can make sure that justice is done to the families of those affected.
Thank you very much, Richard. Now back to you, Allan. We've seen what the government is doing. They're setting up committees to look at the registration of churches. They seem to be taking a proactive measure. They've also set up a panel of inquiry. But what measures can be taken to prevent similar incidents like the deadly incidents we saw in Shakahola forest from happening again in the future? And how can the government work with civil society, religious organizations, and other stakeholders to address the root causes of violence and extremism in Kenya.
I would agree with that. And then, so what's happening right now is more of a reactionary measure by the government. For far too long, there's been a concern across the country that the clergy in this country are a law unto themselves. There's no regulation. We've got no serious qualification for anyone to register a church. Anyone can come up any other day and declare and call himself a pastor, bishop, doctor, reverend, begin preaching extreme ideologies without any theological training. So I think it's a perfect opportunity for the country to interrogate, what are really the prerequisites before a church or maybe a religious institution is registered as someone allowed to duly practice, because previously the clergy have argued that they can internally regulate themselves, so that to insulate against the extreme overreach of the state. But so far, they've failed in terms of ensuring that internal accountability. So perhaps the Parliamentary Select Committee will go forward and come up with recommendations, maybe in terms of legislation, on how to streamline the regulation of the clergy, so that we maybe have kind of a responsible individuals who are entrusted with offering spiritual guidance to the people. And then secondly, in as much as Kenya is a secular state, previously the state and the wider country has maybe adopted a biased approach in terms of looking at extremism and religious radicalization. Due to the hype around this war on terror, there's been an overly focus on on religious fundamentalism associated with the extreme elements of Islam. But I think it's a perfect time now to be objective and accept that even within Christianity, that elements of extremism, people propagate extreme ideologies, they brainwash adherents, like we saw in the Shakahola case that's going on. We've also seen 2 other cases around that Kilifi area, whereby people also, around 200 people, 100 people are also rescued from a home of some rogue clergy, whereby people abandoned their homes and took up residence and shelter within the so-called bishop's clergy, undergoing some extreme doctrines. So I think it's a perfect opportunity for the country to really interrogate too. We also need our media to be responsible, We see every other time on Saturdays, funny characters coming on TV, so-called bishop, reverend, doctor, and then allowed to air their religious sermons live, propagating extreme funny and extreme messages, and then the extortion, they brainwash people into making monetary contributions to them while the ordinary people get impoverished. So this is a moment for the country to have a relook at a retrospection, the media, the executive arm of government, the registrar of societies that has the power to regulate and license churches. I think this is a perfect opportunity for the country really to get this done. And then also we need our intellectuals, the sociologists, the anthropologists, to work closely in hand with the government, because this goes beyond. It's not basically about iron gloves, alone. We also need kind of intellectual input into investigating what are really the mitigating factors that facilitate such extremists to find ground within different segments of the society. I think we need a multidimensional approach. That would be my take. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allan. You've said a whole lot, especially on this deep retrospection on this particular issue, because it's a very serious issue where hundreds of people have died due to what someone said will be their biggest fate. And I'm going to go over to you, Rita, because these are very serious accusations that have been laid against the president. And on one side, it seems like for some people, or for Raila Odinga, he's saying that William Ruto is trying to hide the truth with the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry. And on the other side, we know that we have the protests where Raila Odinga is still trying to talk about the fact that William Ruto is illegally in the position of the president, and also talking about the cost of living, where we had protests. So do you feel that this situation has been politicized by Raila Odinga, or do you feel that there's a similar, or there's a possibility that William Ruto is trying to hide in this Commission of Inquiry that he has constituted, when there's already Senate had a committee, when there's already a police that has sought to investigate this particular issue?
All I can say is this is a tragedy which cannot be swept under the carpet. You cannot hide the fact, because people have already died. People have reported their families missing. And so far, we have like 126 bodies exhumed so far, and the exercise is still ongoing. So these are cases which cannot be hidden. The facts will come out because the bodies will be recovered. Families will still complain that people are missing, and the Commission of Inquiry will have a rough time if they try to hide the facts. I don't think they'll do it. So we're expecting both the Senate, the Commission of Inquiry, the DCI, and all others investigating the cases, the human rights activists, to come up with the facts and ensure that Kenyans know the truth. And also action must be taken to those behind the Shakahola massacre, because these are tragedies which has never happened in Kenya before. And so Kenyans expecting that someone will be answerable, action will be taken against those responsible. And those churches behind the incident are also expected to be closed. So far, we have the Register Society has given the churches of Pastor Mackenzie and Odero 30 days to show cause why they should not be shut down. So Kenyans expecting these churches to be shut down, those responsible to be taken to court and face justice. So there's nothing to hide here. If anyone tries to hide the facts, they'll have a rough time.
Okay, thank you very much, Allan Odero, and also Richard Basiro for being a part of today's conversation. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this fast, interesting and tragic situation with regards to the Shakahola massacres. Thank you very much. We do appreciate your time and insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.